Over to you.
Excellent. So whilst the panelists please come up to the stage, I'm going to take this end as well as you, Justin. So we've had some great content this morning, talking from broadcasters and then different sides of the industry about how we can collaborate and work together better. So that's the point of this panel. How can broadcasters and tech players work together better to sort of grow the industry, to grow the total video marketplace? And more how broadcasters should work with FAST, how broadcasters should work with streamers, how the wider TV industry should work together to collaborate. So I'm told we won't do intros because you can read it all up on the screen. I'm a former media exec, as Justin introduced me very kindly. So welcome, panelists. Let's start with our two buyers. We've got Lucy and Matt on stage. Mark McKee, this morning in the opening keynote, he explained from Freewill how this market how the landscape has got increasingly complex. There's so much choice. There's so many different players when you look at streaming fast, VOD, BVOD. Ben Tatar from Operative says TV is undervalued, linear TV is undervalued. How do you two approach it? How do you compare all these different options that you're faced with and plan for VOD versus fast? Let's start with you, Lucy.
So, every agency will have their own planning tools. So, we're no different. We've got a couple of different planning tools within media brands. So, it very much treats every channel individually. And you're looking at mass reach to start with, based on, unique reach, until you get to the point of diminishing returns, and then you move to the next channel from there. So, you're starting with the largest, which traditionally has been linear. And digital's certainly fighting for its share there, and then you keep going. So you're factoring in then quality, attention, all the different metrics that come to it. So every channel gets treated uniquely.
Is that hard to understand all that? Has it got increasingly difficult?
It's certainly a lot more fragmented than it used to be. Back in the days when you had 4 channels or whatever on linear, and digital's certainly coming up from a video perspective. Yeah, it's evolved.
And what about you, Matt, from your perspective?
Yeah, much in the same manner as Lucy's group, we're looking at our own, planning tools and modelling that helps us kind of understand that. And I think in any media, anything when you're looking at comparing the contribution of certain channels in that mix, fundamentally measurement sort of helps underpin your understanding of what that contribution is. And for us, we don't look at, we look at the total TV ecosystem a lot of the time. Each channel might have a slightly different activation mechanism within that, but we are looking at total TV in a whole, and I'd probably build on the fact that I think total TV is a bit of a blurry area because it gets banded around a lot. We look at total TV as all TV-like platforms, streaming services included in our view of that, and we're looking at the currency as a really valuable tool within that for TV, but we're also looking at third-party measurement to help us better understand those partners that aren't being measured by that currency currently.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, you think of MMM modelling and what have you, that all builds into where you lean, and you heard from Cam earlier from Optus, talking about Mutinex and how that will evolve the model as well. So yeah, there's a number of different factors you look at.
Okay, and how do you compare that with other video channels, and especially social media video?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, look, I think that's the really difficult thing. There is no single source that does the total video market, if we're kind of calling it that, and that's what everybody wishes to work towards. And I'm sure every group is looking at some sort of workaround to achieve that. I think when we look at social video, there's no doubt about it, it has a role to play. I think we're seeing revenue shift that direction with a lot of marketers. You have an ability to achieve reach in really cost-effective ways. The caution to throw to the wind in that is that not all of these platforms are equal. We've seen so much data today about the contribution, attention, the effectiveness of channels versus one another, and I think that's the lure of cheap reach is a dangerous game to play. And if anyone that watched that Peter Field video that was shared around, I think you can kind of see there that it can often come at a cost.
And it's also different creative for social video, you know, where you can't just pick up your 30-second or 15-second creative from TV and put it into social video. You're changing the creative message completely. Well, not the message, but, you know, the format, so that it's vertical video. So, you know, you do have to treat it slightly differently to just pure play linear or total TV.
Do any of your clients, are you hearing that your clients want to dial down their spend on TV and increase their spend on social video? And how would you answer that?
I think, you know, the likes of a TikTok or whatever have certainly been growing over the last few years, that's for sure. But I don't think it's just literally taking it from linear and putting it onto social video. There's different reasons why you would use social video. So it is very much, it comes back to what your strategic objectives are as well.
Yeah, I would say it's individualised for clients. You know, every client, every CMO is going to have a different point of view and probably different pressures on why they might want to do that. And I think it's the agency's job and the group's job to help sort of, I guess, transition that in a sustainable way that's not going to damage the long-term health of your clients' brands.
Yeah, because it was pretty compelling presentation by Peter Field, which was at the Future of TV Global in December last year, where he explained the long-term value. Yeah. So Nick, how can you help the brand side, the demand side, understand the value of what BVOD compared with the wider TV, all the different TV options that there are?
So I think, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. This could go well. This could either define my career or limit it. Look, actually, can we take a step back? Because I think if we agree, there's a lot of talk about audiences and stuff today, and I think audiences are shifting, and our entire businesses, be it 7, 9, and 10 or whoever, are shifting, and we know that we are going to a streaming future, okay? Like, that is absolutely given. We're all moving that way, and there is so much opportunity, not just from a client perspective and an audience perspective, but bringing on new brands and new markets for us. We're already investing heavily in Ad Manager, which is a regional market play, as Liana talked about. We're seeing huge take-up of people that currently don't use TV. But we're absolutely going that way. But for the foreseeable future, and I mean literally for the next 10 to 15 years, analog, linear, because we've got a linear stream which is growing substantially in our BVOD platforms, is going to be around and is going to have to be brought into the mix, okay? And I can see a few faces sort of rolling their eyes, like, but trust me, look, put it this way, and this is, I wasn't going to say this, 2011, I was on a panel for 9MSN, and we were predicting the death of newspapers. Newspapers is gone. Absolutely 5 years, and everybody agreed in the entire day that newspapers will be dead in 5 years, and we have a newspaper publishing asset that's doing extremely well, and, you know, according to SMI, you know, newspapers are writing hundreds of $1 million of still, so let's not...
Are the numbers the same as they were 10
No, they're declining, and that's absolutely good. Of course it's going to decline. There's no question that those revenues are going to decline, and it's going to move into that digital field. So to go back to your question, okay, what can we do? Well, as an industry, and collectively Nine is very much a part of this, we can work out measurement and opportunities and products that manage that crossover. And VOZ, you know, and based on all of the OzTAM data, which has been around for how many, 50 years, 60 years, industry standard, absolute gold class, is the one that we are working with the other free-to-airs to manage that transition from a measurement and currency perspective. And then VOZ streaming is the activation of that which is coming this year. So we have invested time and effort, and I know it's taken a long time, in developing out currencies that manage that transition and actual products that help these guys buy, measure, and understand the flow of those audiences to monetize them effectively.
So back to the buyers then, do you get the metrics and the data that you need? Not so much about measurement, but maybe about other elements of the value of TV?
No, go for it. I don't care. It's been boring so far. Let's go for it.
All right. Look, I think VOZ is coming.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about that. It's been on the journey. I do think it's taken probably a bit too long, and in that time, the world has moved a little bit further.
Other people have filled it back.
Yeah.
No question.
You know,
but are they just fancy dashboards rather than real measurement?
Look, I love the gold standard. I won't, you know, dispute that.
Proven. 50 years.
On that point, I think every
Or you
marketer
could
in the
go-
room that's looking at anything that's not the currency, they need to be challenging their agency and really diving into the weeds of the methodology.
Methodology,
I think
understanding.
it's really important.
Local presence in this
But
market.
there will be multi-currency coming, and I know we're not getting into measurement. There's a whole different panel for that one, but there will be multi-currency.
Yeah, understandable. But not all currencies are created equal.
No?
And I do worry a bit that we have supplemented gold standard of measurement and understanding audiences delivery for fancy dashboards. And I'm from a digital background, I get it, I love a fancy dashboard, but it's not always the right way to go. And I think that as an industry, you can level, certainly at the fruitier as well, you know, VOS is currently just 7, 9, and 10. I think that's an absolutely fair call, but that's not what we want.
No.
Actually, shit, I should have prepared. I didn't ask anyone about that. But we want other broadcasters, and what I can't define by broadcasters, there's a lot of definitions, is long-form content suppliers.
Premium video.
Premium video, SVODs, all of them in there that we can all work collaboratively across that industry to provide that measurement in a seamless, easy way, and we'll all benefit as a result.
But as the horse bolted with Foxtel, I can't see where they're sitting, but Foxtel obviously launching the video Futures Collective.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that came out today, didn't it? Look, a well-timed announcement is what Franey's good at, let's be honest. I've worked with him for 8 years. He's a fucking genius at it. Well, my answer to that is, look, I support the collective. I think,
But I think there should be.
But you're judged on what you do. So, like, if we do it, we'd love them to be involved. If they get it up and running with the global players, which are really hard to engage in these areas, then, you know, I'm not saying we'll go down that route because, you know, again, it goes back to the fact that you need that free-to-air analog measurement combined with the digital measurement for literally the foreseeable future to understand what your video's doing.
So what about other metrics like audience data and targeting? So I'm thinking very much, I've always had the approach that the benefit of digital TV was the ability to have the targeted data at scale, to be able to get these audiences at scale. I read some research on the weekend that that's actually a very British and American approach. In some markets, it's more about cheap, and in some markets, it's more about reach.
So oh, sorry.
Go on, Nick.
I don't even know it's my question. Fuck it.
Audience data.
And to cover Justin's point, you know, like how are we going to make money going forward?
Yeah.
You know, the targeting, the data, all of those things, absolutely that's where we're going to compete furiously.
Okay. Compete with who?
Each other and the global players. And, you know, I've said this a lot on panels, but I'm going to say it again because I just think it's really important, though. In Australia with 27 million people, I don't care if you're Amazon and you've got all this huge data down, you know, massive data. You go past age, gender, location, and one data set that has to be pretty broad, and you literally targeting 4 people in Bondi. And that's a lot of money. Give it to me, I'll knock on their door. Like it is really difficult. It's great to talk about it in the US and UK with population sizes as much as they are. And because Amazon and the SVODs don't release numbers, it's difficult to know what their total universe is, never mind what their advertising universe.
Yeah.
But you need large-scale audiences to activate targeting to that degree. And fortunately 9 do, and I can only speak for 9. So those are great ways to your point, as revenues plateau or level out or due to more competition, in audiences, the revenue per user from digital platforms is significantly higher than analog as a result, and I can't go into too much detail about that because of those targeting metrics.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
All I heard then was you go past age and gender, you're targeting 3 people, so you don't do first-party data matching with Channel 9?
No. Oh, look, no, okay, I'll take that on.
But it was 4 people.
No. You've lost control. I'll take that on. All right, so let's go. Yes. Do you know what? Clients that do data matching and try to target infinite little groups does not work. Yeah. First-party data matching absolutely works on suppression and activation of large-scale audiences, and it is hugely valuable. Suppression and activation of large-scale audiences, dog and cat owners, absolutely. If you really want to target those niche segments, they simply don't work in this country.
I agree with you on that one.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll shut them.
No, this is all good. So it's great for suppression and being able to understand the different makeup of a household. Okay, good. But does everyone know that? I mean, Justin asked the same question earlier. Does TV have a problem with selling itself? Yeah, you say yes, Matt?
Look,
do the other platforms make it easier to buy?
I think if we look at the landscape at the moment, I think some are doing it better than others.
Okay.
I think, I've spent a lot of my career working sell side with TV networks, the vast majority of it. So, look, and I say it also through the lens of, like, I'm a really passionate TV person. I want TV to succeed. I want it to be hyper competitive with other media. I think it deserves to be. It has such an important place in our media landscape. But I think part of the challenge that has been faced for TV networks is that they have, for a very long, they call it 56 years, remained unchallenged and front of the queue when it came to the carving up of that media pie, and the rate at which they've had to adapt is really, really rapid. There are now other competitors that are playing at that front of the queue with them, and I don't know if everybody is adapting fast enough. It shouldn't be a problem selling it. They've got tons of data with tons of effectiveness that we can see there. One other area where I think that's a bit of a challenge is how TV networks today are engaging with the next generation of media agency buyers as well. We talked about, I know Leonie talked about sample sizes and that being really dangerous. But the fact is we've got a whole generation. We're a young industry. Like, I'm one of the old guys in our building. It's like shocking, and that realisation comes to me. But we've got this whole generation of people that are not necessarily consuming large portions of TV, and it's dangerous. They are not the norm. They are not middle Australia, but they are some of the ones that are going to be continuing to make decisions around investment as they get into positions of more prominence within the agency. So that's an opportunity, with how you engage, how you stay relevant. You've got all the proof points. But that's kind of my view on it.
I would really agree with that. Could I just ask one question?
Yep.
And I don't know the answer to this because this could be... But some of the tools used to measure effectiveness of TV versus other digital media businesses seem stacked against us.
Yes.
Last click attribution, which we all know is rubbery at best, is still hugely used. And I think our value in not just driving long-term brand awareness, which I think 70 years of TV has proven that works, but our value in driving that performance-based media is continually undervalued because of the digital tools that we use.
Yep.
And that's not to say that we don't need to be better at getting you better tools, but would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think I think this platform is still the most powerful brand building platform with contribution to performance. It's just our ability to communicate that and make that land and stick is where we've got room for improvement.
And change behaviour, as John was talking about too. So Adele, you were going to chime in.
I guess from my side, my opinion around this is really, I don't think there is an issue with selling TV. I think it's just that the digital world is so measurable. There's a plethora of data that exists within, from our lens at Index, the programmatic side of things. And so when you're looking at data-led decisions in the marketing mix, there is a lot of data that is stacking towards the digital side that isn't able to be as easily layered into validating and justifying the position of traditional TV within a budget. So I don't think it's a problem with selling it as such. It's just that from a data decisioning side, it's much stronger within the digital space.
So the question has come up a couple of times on the panels this morning about brand versus performance. I think Liana gave some great answers on that as well. So from your perspective, Adele, and also Chris, are we talking more about performance budget? If it's so measurable, does it attract more performance and risk brand building, losing on brand?
Early days, it definitely did. It was like the birth of programmatic was all performance driven, right? Like we were living and breathing CPCs and ultimately CPAs. But when you start to look at the power of layering data into digital advertising, especially into STV, streaming TV, BVOD, etc., there is a lot more you can do with storytelling and data for branding in those ecosystems. And so I think there has been, as new markets or new channels emerge, there is a lean towards performance buying because it validates the investment that's there. But then as it matures, you start to see everyone leaning in and bringing a lot more of the branding dollars into the space from an addressability perspective, measurement, etc. So.
Yeah, I think the C-suite's become addicted to these performance metrics and they're just applying them across the board because there are marketers out there who genuinely believe in, the power of building a brand. There's an upper funnel. You can't classify those results as you can in the performance funnel, but then try explaining that to somebody who is saying to you, look, if I give you $10, are you going to give me 50 back? And so it's a very fluid way of measurement. I think in the latter days of display at its peak, that's where we kind of got to. So I think that needs to be established. And like Nick's right. I mean, I think we have a propensity in this market to index ourselves very close to the US, the UK, very different population sizes. I mean, if you look at the referendum, 17 million came out to vote that day, and voting's compulsory here. So you're dealing with quite a small sample, really. And if you want to deploy the same targeting, same expectations in this market, it's not going to work. But going back to the original question on how tech plays a role, I mean, I think the collaboration between the tech partners in this industry is actually really good. Sure, if you draw a Venn diagram, there are little aspects there we all compete and we have different interests, but at the same time, we're working with the IB, Video Council, the Tech Lab to try and help give publishers, OEMs, streamers, all of the tools to make sure they can sell to buyers. Look, I can guarantee no back-to-back ads. I can guarantee it's a brand-safe environment. I can deduplicate at a session level, let alone at an ad pod level. So in terms of how we're doing that, I think the tech community here does really well. Also in terms of just looking at targeting, I mean, my background's with a publisher, so before in my old ad server, the tools were quite blunt. So I had to use programmatic to really try and scale and enrich the bid requests so I could get those higher CPMs. So the audiences on my platform were all probably, multi-generational, watching Korean content, Southeast Asian. During the time of the COVID vaccine rollout, New South Wales Gov had to get messaging out in other languages. So using parameters outside of just content, IP, but also subtitles language, again, more data to enrich that request. That allowed us to not just reach the right people for the client, but also charge those higher CPMs, because we talked today about linear is undervalued, but I also think streaming inventory is undervalued as well. Look at what's happened globally last year. I think only Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery made a profit. So there's a lot that needs to happen there to try and give the buyers more justification around the value, but at the same time, being super targeted is going to limit your scale. And I think, it's not going to work to anyone's benefit. So there's different ways. It's like Adele says, it's always changing, but as far as the tech players go, there's definitely a lot of collaboration. I think, we're working really well to do it with buyers and with publishers.
Just to add to that, and the collaboration that you hear tech players talking about is really around standardization. If we look at it and we take a step back we sit in the middle of the ecosystem, and so the more consistent we can be between the tech on either side, and ultimately, we're going to drive that value on the outsides. So from an advertiser's perspective, if we're consistent in the signals that we're sending between the tech partners in the middle, that that's the end user you're looking for, or this is the audience, and this is the environment, this is the content that you're looking for. So I think there's a lot of healthy collaboration, but really from the tech side of things, it's really around that standardization, because if we can standardize the middle, then the rest can innovate on top of it.
But is there room for more collaboration on the actual tech? I was at a conference pre-COVID with Mark Ritson in Bucharest, where he urged all the broadcasters in the room, all the broadcasters across Europe, to just make one app that had all the content on from everywhere in the world, but that would be easy for consumers to access and for advertisers to be able to target the individuals. So is there more that can be done, both talking to the tech players now, that can be done from a technology collaboration perspective beyond standardization?
I mean, no, there always is. I mean, to give you some examples, I mean, we did, like last year, Trade Desk, Publica, Index did a trial on supporting, podded requests, which is OpenRTB 2.6, where it gives buyers more transparency into the actual pod, so you can actually assign value to where the ad break will go. That reduced ad selection emissions by 85%. Again, you could argue that there are some slight competing interests or overlaps there, but that kind of collaboration and research I think is really valuable. And then you've also got ads.cert 2.0, which is more about how do you secure the programmatic supply chain, because don't forget, there's this whole mid-tail of publishers as well. In Australia, by the way, AVODs like Yup TV, IG, Rakuten, the FAST networks, they tend to get overlooked, because if you're a media planner, perhaps you have a bias or you just have an assumption that this one environment's going to fulfill my contextual needs. But utilizing all of the tech protocols that we collaborate on and we put together, it empowers all of the publishers to adopt them and also give the buyers the same line of sight across the buy. So I think it's still, I mean, as I say, comparing to when I worked in display and when we were chasing banners around the web, I think there's a lot more collaboration than what there has been, but yeah, it can always improve.
And can collaboration's hard.
Yeah.
All right? don't know if I'm speaking out of school. We have bi-weekly meetings around for streaming to get that up and running across all the networks. That is constant. You've got to constantly develop. You've got to really push the boundaries. It takes time. I appreciate VOS a long time, but it does take time. And there are also regulatory concerns in that collaboration that we have to bring in. So it's not as simple as, you know, you guys should get together and just do this. We'd love to, and I hope many of those things that we've discussed today are on that roadmap. I will also level it out, though. Like, you know, it feels like there's like one free-to-air person on every panel and 5 people having a pop. Not on this one, but on others. Like, I don't see YouTube collaborating with TikTok. Yeah. Are they? You know, are YouTube trying to collaborate across the business to be more transparent in what they're doing and so those local needs? I always feel like I'm picking on them. I'm not. Sorry. They're just really good at what they do, and I feel that, you know, they've clearly established themselves as a major player. You know, not, you know, and the player going forward. Like, where, you know, what's expected or the level of collaboration that's expected of us, I don't see being transferred across the global players because they simply won't fucking do it. You know, so yes, we are collaborating. Be patient, be kind, and help us.
Be patient and kind. I like it. So in Germany, just a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement from the 2 biggest pay TV broadcasters, ProSieben and RTL, about collaborating from an ad tech perspective, enabling buying more simply across the from ProSieben more simply across the RTL inventory. So what about collaborating, not with the big tech players, as you've mentioned, but with the local broadcasters in the market? I know it's something you know about.
In terms of our collaboration with the other free-to-airs.
Could you collaborate? Could you make it easier for the buyers to buy?
That's literally what we're trying to do with Voice.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it's an open welcome to as long as you've got broadcast quality, long-form content with highly engaged audiences, we want to work with you. To create easy ways to buy our platform and measure that effectively. You know, and you know, I'm very passionate, you know, because I've been involved in it, involved streaming, and also not what it's going to do on launch, but also the opportunity to build on that and collaborate further and expand that network out. So yeah, like that's absolutely where we see our future. And although, you know, 9 will compete furiously with individual players in certain individual areas, on major things around the industry, around currency and measurement, we absolutely want to collaborate to make things easy for buyers to understand what we deliver.
And what about when it comes to all the players that Chris mentioned, the other fast players? How would you collaborate, or how do you approach fast?
Yeah, as long as it's that broadcast quality content and they are open to the same level of transparency of measurement. Because what underpins a lot of what we do is obviously that OzTam relationship and that OzTam ID. And there are certain people that come to us and say, well, this is how transparent you need to be in order to surface completely your inventory and how transparent you need to be to provide the same level of management as other broadcasters. As long as they're happy to do that, we'll happily partner with them.
But the sooner you get the other players, the SVODs, the AVODs, to the table, the better. Because at the moment you are just launching 7, 9 and 10 SBS, you know. It's so much of a silo, and you've got the other guys playing over here now, having a different conversation. Like, you need to bring it together.
Yeah, no, I'm worried that I'm treading on Karen's toes on this one because it's very much an OzTam. But I don't think I'm speaking too at school by saying that we see as much value as bringing those players in as we can. But again, that's hard. You know, they've been brought in on Barb. That's a great test case that we want to do. Let's be honest, Australia's down the pecking order of importance for that. So, and having those conversations, which I think we've been quite open about, or OzTam's been quite open about that they're having, that just takes time.
Yeah, but in the meantime.
Yeah, I get that feeling.
Yeah,
well, let's be honest, a think tank's not a product just yet, but you know, if they launch.
But think tanks lead to something, so I think the longer you take to get everyone together.
Agreed.
Change happens.
What would you like to see, Lucy?
At the moment, there's 2 different groups. Obviously, one is totally in its infancy, but bring everyone together. You know, Google are going into the VFC probably to look rather than act. But start joining the conversations up. And the sooner we can do that, that's what clients want, is, you know, to be able to look at total TV as a whole rather than just the BVOD TV linear ecosystem over here and then SVOD, AVOD over here. Like, bring it together. You have to have that free-to-air analog component as well, because trust me, it will still be alive, well and kicking for many, many years to come.
and creating those TV moments.
Yeah, and just for those that don't know, that's what VOZ does. It brings together that, as well as reach and frequency measurement around the BVOD and hopefully SVOD players, it also brings in that linear TV component. And you need that because it is still huge in this country.
Well, I mean, that creates the total TV.
Exactly.
So yes, you need it.
Matt, would you like to see more collaboration?
I would, and I mean, look, it's a no-brainer. Like that's what
Yeah.
every buyer wants to see. That I'd probably go. And to your point, Nick, there's been one person from the TV network on nearly every panel and copped a bit today. In your defence, I do think you're held to a different standard of measurement and transparency and all of those things, and it is counterintuitive. You've got other players that have come into market unregulated, do not have that same level of transparency expectation put on them. So it is a tough battleground. I just would love to understand what the barriers are from the other partners. And obviously it is that transparent. How do you remove those barriers to get those players involved? And again, it's not really your question to answer, it's more of a
You know, and if I was senior agency people, I'd be asking those questions. A bit of pressure on them maybe, you know, it's what we want.
serve.
How do you explain
Maybe
that?
restrict spend from them if they weren't doing it.
That has happened in other markets.
Yeah, it's been worked very well.
How do you explain it, Matt? How do you explain it to your clients?
Explain that television have a disproportionate level of scrutiny against.
Yeah, and also, but that tallies with a higher quality of content, doesn't it? Or does it?
Well, I think that's a new battleground for all the TV streaming ecosystem is, and that should remain a battleground regardless. Once measurement's done or not, we've heard a little bit about ad loads today and ad clutter. You've talked about, even between fast channels and SVODs and BVOD and free-to-air, there's argument to be made, and marketers definitely do value some of those pieces of content and platforms differently. Whether or not they're prepared to pay for those differences of how they're valued currently, that is a battleground. Price is a battleground for sure for the TV networks.
Adele, can you help with this? Can you help bring together all the different available different audiences into one place? Can you make that easier to buy?
I think that's the long-term vision and goal, right?
How long-term?
How fast does this industry move? Very
Fast?
Yes. Credit where credit is due. For those that don't know me, I've been in programmatic for way too long. The model that has been structured with VOZ streaming and the way that it is not a single entity in its nature is actually really beautiful. We saw there was, I think in the digital world many years ago, there was this notion of publisher cooperatives that stood up. And they were single operating entities that operated independently to the media owners that were part of them. They controlled the pricing, they controlled the access, they controlled the data. But it was in some ways a walled garden in its nature. What VOZ streaming allows to do is really just enable the buyers to lean in and transact in a way that isn't limited. And so I think when you start to look at how businesses can come together and collaborate around something like this, and then you standardize the industry behind it, you're creating a very consistent language in which people can transact into the future. And so I don't have a timeline on when this would all be possible, my magic world, but I do think that the more we lean in and collaborate, the more we lean into tech to address the problems that exist, we will see the evolution of the industry towards a state where, from a user's perspective, and this is ultimately why we're here and discussing this, from a user's perspective, when they're engaging with content, irrespective of the device, the environment, or anything, it's a similar experience. And tech can help. We're doing a lot of work on our infrastructure to support scale and efficiency, but really it's just down to that standardization of the tech on the backside that will ultimately really propel the industry forward.
And can you work with your demand-side partners to help them understand to not just buy the cheapest?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's a fair amount of advocacy that we're doing at the moment. We work with a number of players, not only the DSPs themselves, but the agencies, and we're informing and educating. When you're considering, the programmatic buy as part of the mix, how is this what does the back end start to look like from an ROI, ROAS perspective as well? So the education is key, and helping people understand what are we buying in programmatic is kind of the big sort of hurdle to get over when you're bringing someone in from a traditional media world into digital. But I think we've got a really good base. Like, you know, programmatic video in Australia has existed for a number of years. Like, we're one of the more mature markets globally. This is not new news.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, just on, again, as Publica, we're built as a sell-side technology platform, and more of our clients now are starting to ask us to adopt protocols around, you know, identity live ramp ID, CDPs, which I know has been done now for a few years anyway, but also unified ID. And I think, you know, if you think about something like that, which is interoperable, it's privacy compliant, it gives publishers, regardless of their disposition, the opportunity to pass first-party data. And again, just whether you're VOS or not, or whatever your disposition, you can still participate in that buy. So being able to, you know, again, pass those signals, really try and give that line of sight. I think that's where we're seeing, I guess, most of our conversations now around identity. But as Adele says, it's a moving target. So
okay, so you're able. We've talked through identity data, CDPs, programmatic advertising, live hero moments, and making life easier for the buyers. Please join me in thanking my panelists.
Okay, wonderful. Joanna, you did a marvellous job. I should have probably briefed you on how to tame Nick Young on that panel. I failed to do that. I also learned something new as well while watching that panel, that socks are no longer fashionable in Australia. You know, I'm in my mid-40s now, so I'm pretty much fucked in that department anyway. It's lunch. Wonderful. Lunch is served over there. You can bring it into this room. We'll be back.